All right. So we got the signal that there are a few people with us. That's great. Hello, everybody. Then welcome warmly to our edition of the JEF Hangout that we organized in cooperation between Treffpunkt Europa, the German version of the New Federalist webzines, and the German branch of the Young European Federalist. I'm very happy that we have a lot of European voices from all over Europe here. We will introduce our guests a bit later. Yeah, cool to start this hangout that we organize via Zoom, but as a quick remark, we are also recording the hangout, so we will publish the video or parts of the video later, so you can view it also then later on YouTube or social media channels, Instagram, TV. We will have to figure that out. I mean, obviously, I guess most of you know that we are living in interesting yet also difficult times in Europe. Not only the Corona crisis has shown us actually where the European idea is problematic, or the European project lacks some, where it has some problems. We see that during the Corona crisis, European solidarity was under pressure, that the EU member states reacted with national reflexes first. And into this situation, there comes the presidency of the German government, to which high expectations were raised. We want to discuss that tonight with the European perspective. We are very happy that we could gather perspectives from different European countries, and we will exchange on what they think on the program of the German presidency, but specifically on pressing topics like the Multiannual Financial Framework of the European Union, the recent Council compromise, the European Green Deal, obviously a very important aspect, or the conference on the future of Europe. You will also, as participants, have the chance to include your comments and questions. We kindly ask you to do that in the chat. Then we will take them up for the question and answer session that we will have at the very end of this hangout. A few other rules that I guess by now, after a lot of video conferencing over the last month, please, when you don't speak, mute your mic. We kindly also ask everybody who is not part of the speakers to switch off your video, because we are recording, and then we would put some priority to our guests. Feel free, we warmly invite you to participate social media via the hashtags you can see in the presentation. And of course, feel free to watch it afterwards, share it. We would be happy if we can actually spread the European perspectives we are going to hear a bit further. What are we going to do exactly? We will go through the mentioned 3 different topics one-on-one, and have at the end the question and answer session. So far, that's, I guess, enough for the intro. I mean, we are now going to the important part, that is our beautiful guests, and my co-moderator Marie, editor-in-chief of the Treffpunkt Europa will present them.
Thank you, Malte. Hello, everyone, and an equally warm welcome from my part. I'm Marie. This is actually my second last day of being editor-in-chief at treffpunkteuropa.de, so it's quite an occasion. And it's my honor to introduce to you and introduce to one another the 6 speakers we have invited for tonight. And maybe everyone could raise their hand or post emoji in the chat or something so that we know who is who. With us we have Maria, who is co-editor-in-chief of Kurier Europejski, which is our Polish partner magazine and a member of JEF Poland. We have Balázs, who is from JEF Hungary, Anna from JEF Slovenia. We have Juuso from Finland, who is a member of JEF Federal Committee and also the former editor-in-chief of the New Federalist. We have João, who is the president of JEF Portugal. Then there's Théo, who is editor-in-chief or co-editor-in-chief of Taurillon and a member of JEF-France. And we are very happy to have all of you here with us tonight and very excited to find out more about your perspectives. And with that, I would hand back over to Malte in order to start with the first topic for tonight.
Great, thanks. Yeah, we indeed very, very happy to have all of you here. So let's start with the first topic, which is, I mean, not very surprising, probably, the money. The last compromise of the European Council on the Multiannual Financial Framework, but also on the Recovery Fund to tackle the Corona crisis in the European Union. Also for the German Council Presidency, that was one priority to not only tackle the Corona crisis, but also try to reach a compromise actually on this very difficult topic, the budget, which has been discussed in terms of rule of law, conditionality, for example, but also in terms of common debt. So we are very excited to hear what our guests think of it. I would start with João and like to ask you, how do you view the last the European Council compromise? Do you think it's actually enough with regard to sustainable European solidarity? Do you think more is needed, and do you expect maybe something from the European Parliament, which now also has to agree on it?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for giving me the word. So in my perspective, I think actually the values are starting to get maybe too big. And because what I think, since my background is in finance, is how are we going to pay or to recover after the expenditure of all this money? Of course, that expending money is needed to do more money, to make money, but I'm seeing values in about 1,000 billion euros right now being given around Europe. So that's the latest number that I was actually checking it now. So I see first I saw 300 billion, then I saw 500 billion, 700 billion. Now I see 1,000 billion euros. And one thing that I think that it's very, very good is that this money is being dealt in terms of debt, and the euro is not being devaluated. So I think that's very, very good, because the US approach is actually always devaluating the US dollar and to print more money. And I actually thought that Europe will devaluate the euro and then printing more money, giving more money to people. But actually they are going to the debt option, which I think is way healthier, and also using money that was inside the European, the ECB and the vaults of Europe for these kind of situations. So I think that is a very, very good strategy. So in general, I think that Europe is doing very, very good. In terms of money, so let me just speak quickly about Portugal. In terms of money, I think that we have more than enough. Actually, of course, people always say that it's not enough, but in my perspective, I think that it is enough. I think it's even more than we need, actually. But yeah, so our president is very, very happy that we got a very good deal for ourselves, which is obviously good. But I think that with this kind of money, with this kind of values, Europe will recover quite nicely. And of course, this is if we don't see a second wave or second stage of the virus. I think the second stage of the virus is what worries me and worries, I think, everyone in general. But if that's not the case, I think that this kind of money will be more than enough or enough to put the economy back on track.
Théo, I saw you nodding a lot. Actually, do you agree?
Yes, I agree with certain points of what João has said. Sorry. Should I introduce a bit what are the expectations of France about the next generation EU? Or?
Yeah, sure, that would be cool.
So to put it in a nutshell, I think that, and I think you should know it, but this is one of the great success of President Macron and the French presidency and the French government on the European stage, because the French government has advocated debt mutualization union for years, and Germany has always refused so far. So I think that's a point, and this is a good thing that France and Germany have finally agreed on a recovery plan with a common method to recover. For the figures, I think that is it enough to put 700 billion euros on the table for the next few years? Go to the resolution to demand 200 billion euros. So is it enough? Is it not enough? It would depend on the depth of the recession, and the recession will be very deep, but the recovery may be in 2001 better than expected. So we don't know. I think that's rather than the amount of the money, that's the how fast we can to save the economy. So I think that has taught us is something that obvious to us. To reform how the European Union is working to money and way more than recovery plan. This is, I mean, the EU is at a crossroads with this next generation EU recovering plan. Either we continue and we keep on working like this, like what the Lisbon Treaty is enabling us to do. So with unanimity for fiscal or the qualified majority for a few things, not the vast majority of important things, or we are going to take benefit, for example, from the Conference of the Future of Europe to create a more integrated and a more federal Europe. And one last point is very important. We have talked about Hamiltonian, the so-called Hamiltonian plan, the so-called Hamiltonian moment, for example, in the European Union. Is it a Hamiltonian moment? Once again, I don't know. I mean, it's not a moment, but it can become one if, for example, the recovery plan is creating a precedent. Because what France is hoping, and what Germany is not hoping at all, is that we borrow money. I mean, the Commission borrow money from the financial. So it's a debt neutralization, but it should be temporary. And Germany is very, very clear about that. It should be a temporary borrowing of money. But what France is expecting, what the French presidency is expecting, is that it will to borrow more money in the future and the transfer union, so to thanks to the jurisprudence and to the precedent of the situation. So there are many things to at stake, and I think the few in the next few months will know much more about what things are going to talk about that in the next few months. So it's not only between France and Germany, it's between and yes, for now it's something that we are satisfied in France, and to keep observing that and to see what's going to happen.
Thank you. Talking about satisfaction with the compromise, Maria, I would like to ask you, unfortunately, we have so many topics and so many great guests that we will not be able to manage to have every perspective on every topic. But maybe as a last speaker on the Multiannual Framework Recovery Fund, Maria, did you see that in Poland there was satisfaction also with the compromise? And I personally would be very interested in knowing how was the rule of law discussion actually received. I mean, Poland being among the countries who, at least it was perceived like that, fight it against that conditionality.
Yeah, sure. As Balázs is not going to speak in this part, I will quote his Prime Minister, Mr. Orbán, during a joint press conference with the Polish Prime Minister Morawiecki regarding the Next Generation EU recovery plan, said that anyone in Europe who knows mathematics would like to be Polish. I've seen the numbers. Indeed, Poland is really satisfied with the outcome of the negotiations, which ended up on July 21st. Poland, first of all, has not suffered as much as many Southern European countries. Poland, moreover, is expected to have a positive growth rate next year. It is projected to trend around 4%. And while the entire budget was cut by 22%, the share of Poland was only reduced by 3%. So economically speaking, Poland is a winner of this deal. It will get around 140 and 24 billion euros in grants. There is no doubt that Prime Minister Morawiecki was right, partially right, when saying that Poland had achieved its goals. However, as you said, Malte, there is an ambiguous situation regarding the rule of law conditionality, because while it is written in the final declaration that there would be a relationship between preserving EU financial interests and the rule of law, the Polish government is claiming that there is no clear mechanism that would help implement this principle. So the government is saying right now that Poland will have access to all funds without this rule of law conditionality. It is not completely true, because the European Commission has yet to establish such a mechanism, and then it will be presented to the EU Council, which will have to vote with a qualified majority on it. So the decision is yet to come. There is another certain conditionality, the climate one, so I will come back to it later on. But in the current context, Poland is satisfied with the deal, and there is no clear basis not to allow Poland to have access to the EU funds in the coming years.
Thank you, Maria. I think that was the perfect transition for me. Moving on to what is going to be the second topic on tonight's agenda, the European Green Deal, which is what Ursula von der Leyen famously called Europe's man on the moon moment, a phrase which seems to be quite open to a lot of interpretations. Cutting a rather long story extremely short, the goal of the Green Deal is to become climate neutral by 2050, meaning that the EU will reduce its greenhouse gas emissions to absolutely zero. Von der Leyen called it Europe's hallmark, saying that Europe should become a front runner in the field. There has been quite a lot of criticism, though, with on the one hand, some countries arguing that due to their reliance on coal as a power source, climate neutrality will not be possible for them in the near future. And on the other hand, others, mostly activists and NGOs, arguing that 2050 will be way too late. Théo, maybe you could start off and give us like a quick introduction as to what things are like in France. Has there been considerable opposition or support to it?
Well, the French government has been always in favor of energy transition and the fight against climate change. So setting up a Green Deal strategy as a section in France, I mean within the French government, are many points of attention about that. First of all, France is lagging far behind its targets regarding, for example, the strategy, the climate energy package to the most remote countries in cutting greenhouse gas or renewable energy or developing energy efficiency. So it's always a bit like the countries giving lessons about fighting and doing energy transition, but that it's all the way more complicated than Ukraine. And this is one of the main problems now for the fate of the nuclear energy. The European Parliament and the European on the taxonomy of green investments, on green investment or included. France is pushing a lot to nuclear, for example, Germany or Austria or Scandinavia. So even among countries in climate change, there are many of disagreement about like the French government is that the French people as a whole as what it is to test which broke out to tax, for example, fuel or to tax polluting activities. So how social the audience could accept from a social perspective. It occurs. So it's not only a problem of programs, but it also a problem how students could take part in this climate change, and that's why it's a bit worrying that, for example, the transition mechanism has been cut by half, I think, for the Multiannual Financial Frameworks. the fourth main beneficiary. In France, have, for example, many regions on coal and which are Russian. So it's also in those regions, and with the Horizon Europe program, I mean the program diminished. And in technological and social, it's good to set up an energy transition strategy. But now, 100% of renewable energy in the energy mix in the European Union. We don't have the capacity to at every hour, because during the night or we don't have energy. So there are a lot of and without innovation, without research, so without to reach those. So it's quite to think about that and to discuss between European countries. I'm sorry for my connection. I think it's a bit bad. It's better now. So yeah, once again, sorry if I was not very understandable, but yeah, we have many challenges to discuss in the next few months about what energy transition and the fight against climate change should look like.
Thank you, Théo. I think transitioning is a great keyword, and I'd like to give it back to Maria, because you mentioned before that it was a huge factor for the Polish response to the decision made. Could you fill us in a bit more about what the discussion looks like at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So as I anticipated, Poland, well, I didn't anticipate, Poland is very coal dependent, which makes the country the EU's biggest polluter. So to illustrate that, I can quote the President Duda's speech during COP24 in Katowice. He said that coal is Poland's strategic energy source, and according to experts, we have stocks for the next 200 years. So it will be hard for us to move to renewable energy sources. So it is true, of course, that the mining sector has a key role, has had a key role in the overall Polish economy, but its importance is constantly decreasing. However, well, because of being the first polluter of the EU, Poland will be the first beneficiary of the already mentioned Just Transition Fund. It has had some cuts. So instead of getting 8 billion euros, Poland is expected to get 3.5 billion euros, but it's still 35% of the whole transition fund. However, Poland is the only member state that has not committed to the climate goal of climate neutrality by 2050, which creates a conditionality. If Poland is not going to commit to this goal, it will have access only to 50% of the allocated resources from the Just Transition Fund. So on the one hand, Poland can still benefit from the fund, but on the other hand, it is not an incentive for Poland to commit to the climate target, because it will still get some money from the EU. But well, this position from the Polish government can be explained, first of all, because it wanted to show to the Polish electorate that Poland has a strong position towards the EU, and on the other hand, it didn't commit to this climate targets in order to get more funds from the Just Transition Fund. So it is also a political choice not to commit to this target, and generally speaking, to criticize the European Green Deal. But it is not true that the Polish society is against the European Green Deal. There is a growing awareness of the negative consequences of a coal-based economy. People are aware of air pollution and other consequences. The Youth Strike for Climate is pretty active in Poland, so there is a lot of hope in the young generation. And the local authorities, some of them are also trying to do their best at their level. So what is needed is for sure more education for the Polish society to understand that coal, yes, is an important resource for Poland, but there are some risks and we need to tackle with it. And on the other hand, more funding for the local level, because it is not only a matter of the government, but the government has to cooperate with lower governance levels. So that would be my comments on the European Green Deal seen from Poland.
Thank you, Maria. And before we move on, a quick reminder that there's the chat and we have Laura who's gonna look into it if there are any questions. So we are gonna do a Q&A later, but if questions already come to your mind now, feel free to comment at any time. And I would hand over to Anna. Could you give us a quick overview of the Slovenian perspective?
I will just add a quick comment. Slovenia, of course, supports the Green Deal, but we have some second thoughts about the coal industry, because we are still quite dependent on the coal industry, because our energy is like about the third or something we get, the energy we get, it's from the coal industry. But then the most second thoughts we have about the nuclear energy, similar with France and what Théo said, because if we want to become kind of carbon neutral by 2050 and to be, and when we are talking about European energy independence, we have to think not just about the wind or solar energy, because not all countries have this possibility of providing this energy, because Slovenia, for example, has nuclear energy, and we think this nuclear energy shouldn't be seen as something that is unsafe or unclean or unsustainable, because if we want to be kind of carbon neutral or to be independent from Russia in this sense, we need to take into account, of course, nuclear energy as well. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Anna. So I take from that that nuclear is definitely going to be a topic of further discussions too. I think we have to speed up a bit, but I would like to give a last minute on this topic to João, if you would like to comment.
Yes, thanks. I want to give a comment on the agenda for Europe from Ursula von der Leyen, and that I was reading actually before this meeting about the Green Deal. And one thing that she points out is that the Sustainable Europe Investment Plan will support 1 trillion euros of investment over the next decades in every corner of the EU. And one thing that I think that will be a future topic is that if we actually have this kind of money after the Corona crisis or recession, because $1 trillion is the money. Well, it's a lot of money, and I think the majority of this money is being already expended. Is being expended on the help plan for all the countries. So, of course, this is in a different budget, but probably a budget revision will be strictly necessary, and the numbers will be a bit different. So the help for the Green Deal could be a bit different. That's what I want to add.
Great, thanks for that, for these interesting insights. We know it's a lot to discuss actually, and we have so little time. We could talk hours about every topic. That being said, we move on to the next one. But don't stress out. We still have a few minutes to discuss that, and then also to include comments, answers from you guys outside the speakers. Yeah, it strikes me actually that what we need is a broader discussion about the European project, where it should go, and I mean, not only among us try to include the European perspectives, but include European citizens and include it in a profound discussion, actually discussing also about treaty changes, how we can actually tackle all these challenges, and if we need a treaty change, and that was proposed by also Ursula von der Leyen as the conference for the future of Europe. That was supposed to start actually in autumn this year. Obviously, due to Corona, there are some delays, but it was proposed as a project to discuss the European project widely, include the citizens' perspective in it. Balázs, I would like to start with you on that topic. And like to ask you also, I mean, we are discussing among us, but how do you perceive the expectations of the people around you? Like, how do they actually see this conference of the future of Europe? Yeah, I personally always fear it's actually a bubble idea. It's just in the European bubble. Would be nice to hear more about your thoughts and the discussion in Hungary on that, maybe.
Yes, Marty, thank you so much, and thank you for having me here. First of all, linking back to the first topic that we talked about, because the Hungarian perspective, I think, is really important. That is that obviously, as Mario mentioned as well, Hungary and Poland tries to take it as a win, coming off from the recovery fund and seeing it not just as a win for Europe, but also as a win for Hungary, for all the Eastern European countries. But what I would also like to add is that, as João mentioned as well, it's great to see the cooperation and great to see an agreement on this recovery fund. But I think, like the example of Hungary is a really showing example, we need to make sure that monitoring these monies and how they be spent after we've agreed on it is also just as important as reaching the agreement and as the cooperation. So I think that is really important. And then about the Green Deal, it is also, I think, just like the conference in the future of Europe, it's kind of a bubble. I've just before this meeting, I talked to a really close friend of mine and asked him about if he knows anything about the Green Deal. And he's really, he studied in the UK as well, and he actually knew really a few things about the European Green Deal and how it's going to be carried out, and what are the actual things about it in the law, in the European law. And I think it's really important to get these people involved as well, not just in the Brussels bubble, not just in the JEF bubble, to get more people involved in these initiatives and to be very ambitious about these, because these young people can get involved and can bring these new ideas really quickly and really effectively to about the Green Deal, about the European Climate Pact, for instance. And also linking these two back, the recovery fund, only 550 billion euros were destined to be spent on climate or relating to climate. But researchers and experts say that it's still not enough, and this is what von der Leyen is saying, that we need to spend more on these new initiatives, on policies that support the climate neutrality, the neutrality in Europe. And then about the conference on the future of Europe, I think it seems that this topic has kind of disappeared from the political and media debate in the last couple of weeks because of the recovery fund, because obviously it has been the more important thing. But I think it is still very important to keep in mind that the conference on the future of Europe is basically a make or break moment for Europe, because we're gonna set the future, we're gonna set the destiny for Europe for the coming years and for generations to come. So about this, I would like to talk about first, relating to Hungary and from the Hungarian perspective, about the rule of law, about European values, and then about Europe's role in the world. So first of all, I think this is the time at the conference on the future of Europe to stand up for those values that we believe in. This is a time when we stop the rhetoric, we stop the words, and just as David Sassoli, the president of the European Parliament, said, this is the time to make real action. This is the time to organize a really successful conference on the future of Europe. And it must be through involvement of all generations. It must be through involving the young generations, the elderly generations, and all generations. So I believe it is not just about the conference on the future of Europe. It's not just about building a strong, fair, and transparent Europe. It's also about focusing on the strategically very important issues that are now the European Union is facing. So the rule of law subject, I think, has come up in European summits, in European topics way more than Hungary would have liked it to happen, because obviously for Poland and Hungary it's not easy to talk about in this summit, and they kind of have the down hand and they can't really bargain with this having in the background. So I think in the conference of the future of Europe, we really must stand up against any violations against the rule of law, and against any violations against the freedom of the media. As some of you might know, one of the biggest Hungarian media portals, Index, are now being taken over by the government, and the freedom of the press is now basically under threat, not just in Hungary but around the globe, around the continent. And I think the conference should focus on how to tackle these issues, how to get rid of these violations. And also, it needs a really strong personality to lead this conference. I think a chair of this conference should be someone who is dedicated to Europe as much as he can, a federalist in my opinion, and someone who can actually mobilize people to get involved in these talks. And I think it is really important for the German presidency to emphasize this. And I think Angela Merkel can be a person that can lead this procedure to a really successful conference. And just quickly, because I've already talked way a lot than I should have. Sorry, yeah.
Take your time.
Yeah. Okay. Just like a quick adding it to the rule of Europe should also come up at the conference, because I think just like Brexit has shown, the European Union can be weakened by many factors, but I think a strong European international actor is what the citizens expect, and I think this conference should also include the European Union as an international actor in the international fora. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So quite a few topics to cover in the conference. Moving on to you. So actually, knowing that you have lived in quite a few countries in Europe, do you think the conference is actually a good chance to unite citizens and countries behind a common vision, maybe again in Europe? And do you think Angela Merkel would be a good chair for that? But on a second question, you've also wrote a lot about citizen involvement and participation what would be your thoughts actually on how should the citizen participation look like in the conference?
So yeah, I'm calling you from Finland, but I used to live in the UK and also in France for a year. But in terms of citizen involvement, if I now went to the streets of my home city in Finland and asked people about the conference on the future of Europe, I'm not sure if I would even meet anyone who knows that this kind of a conference is coming up. So if we really want some genuine citizen involvement, I think we need national governments and other actors to do a lot more to make citizens aware of this. And this is also what Balázs said. I'm not sure if it extends so far as to make Angela Merkel the chair of the conference, but the idea is that it should not only be the European level institutions that are trying to push this conference on people. I think the initiative has to come from the bottom up as well. So civil society organizations like JEF, but also national governments. I think in general, when we're talking about public engagement on the EU, we're putting a lot of responsibility on the EU's shoulders as an institution. We're always asking why didn't the European Commission do this? Why didn't the European Parliament do that? But when we're looking at public discussion at the national level, we don't really see the national parliaments fostering this debate. It is the media, it is the political parties, and on the European scale, it should be the national governments as well. Another expectation that I've got for this conference is genuine follow-up. I don't want this to become like another talking shop where a handful of citizens who already know a lot about Europe get together, they make their proposals, and then they get forgotten. I think the European Commission, this is where the Commission actually does come in. I think it should commit to making legislative proposals out of the outcomes of this conference, and where the outcomes involve treaty change, then we should be open to discuss whether treaty change will be possible. I don't think that should be entirely a taboo. Now, in terms of substance here, I would tie this back to budgetary solidarity. Finland was notorious for being one of the frugal countries that don't like budgetary solidarity at a European level. During the summit, Finland was one of the frugal five, as it came to be known during the weekend. I think when I've been looking at the EU budgetary discussion in Finland, we always start the discussion from how much each country is paying and how much you're getting back. And in the UK, it was exactly the same. But I think that's the wrong starting point for these kind of conversations, because if you started the conversation from what you want out of the EU, what do you want the EU to be able to do? And then you asked, okay, how much money are we going to need for this? And thirdly, we asked, where's the money going to come from? I think we would see a lot more willingness for countries, for even citizens directly, to contribute to these things. I think if we keep going back and forth about, okay, am I going to get more out of the EU than not, then we're never going to get there, because people feel like they're just paying for nothing. But if we're talking about the EU's actual priorities, then people realize where their money is going, and they might realize that it's actually worth spending. So I think the Conference on the Future of Europe is an excellent opportunity to have these kind of discussions at a European level, if possible, on where the EU is going and how we can develop that. So I think those are basically my expectations for the conference. And for the German presidency, I think, yeah, the German EU Council Presidency can certainly exercise leadership in this field as well, among one of the many actors to get national governments to take this seriously and to get citizens together online or in real life if possible to discuss these things and to ensure that we get citizens who didn't used to be involved in these debates to share their views.
Thanks a lot. Talking about presidency, also the German government is underlining a lot. It's a trio presidency with Portugal and Slovenia. Talking on that, Anna, I would be really interested also in your thoughts on the conference and on the vision for Europe that should maybe be discussed by this conference.
well, if we are talking about the conference on the Europe, I think in the last couple of months in Slovenia, it wasn't really on the agenda. So in the media, we couldn't really heard about it or something. But I think it's a good thing that kind of maybe even the citizens that don't really know much about the EU can participate it and put some proposals how to for the new reform of the EU, or maybe how to make better this financial solidarity and how to unite more the EU. But regarding the German Council Presidency, I think it's the political weight of the Germany that can put these compromises to the next level, I think, because you're so strong, like the economy, and with your Chancellor Angela Merkel, who definitely has really good political and diplomatic networks within the EU. She can influence, and all your German kind of body behind her can influence that you can fulfill your ambitious program, even about the Brexit negotiations, and then the recovery plan and everything. And for us, what is even more important as well is the enlargement to the Western Balkans, because we can see that this geostrategic problem that Europe has. So from this perspective, it's as well important for us, for Slovenia as well.
Thank you, Anna. That was really interesting. We would like to open the floor for everyone else. I think so far there are no questions in the chat yet, but feel free to post. If you'd like to speak up, maybe you can use an emoji or one of the reactions which Zoom has to let us know. And until someone is brave enough to start, I would do that. And I would have another question for Maria, because I'm so really interested in Poland in general and Polish perception of the Green Deal. And I just wanted to go back to the just transition mechanism once again and ask you about how that has specifically been perceived, and like, is money what could change the view, or what else could it be? And also, I feel like we've seen really different perspectives from different Polish politicians. There was a deputy minister of state assets who said the Green Deal was to be forgotten. Then the Minister of Climate asked the Commission for help in transforming the energy sector, etc. Maybe you could also fill us in a bit about the political party dynamics behind that.
Yeah, sure. Well, regarding the European Green Deal and the Just Transition Fund, while the Green Deal has been broadly criticized by the government, given the commitment that the government did not accept to support, now Poland is congratulating itself for being the first beneficiary of the Just Transition Fund. So there are a lot of paradoxes in Polish politics. But curiously, the European Green Deal is not really, the Just Transition Fund is not really the primary topic of the public debate right now in Poland. We are more talking about the idea of the rule of law conditionality. It is really now dividing the country. We have experts invited to the television who claim that there is no rule of law conditionality, and then other people who say, yes, it is written in the document and it will be implemented. So you were talking about expectations from the Conference on the Future of Europe. I would add an expectation in general, not only from the German EU Council Presidency, but in general, that this idea of rule of law conditionality should be clarified as soon as possible. I would prefer it to be clarified this autumn. Another thing is that we need to be cautious with the narrative of this conditionality, because it doesn't have to be a name and shame policy against Poland and Hungary, because we all know that those countries have been particularly breaching the principle of rule of law. But it has to be presented as a universal framework for all EU member states, because now Poland is feeling criticized, victimized by the EU. So I would also underline this idea of narrative. And I would like to take this opportunity to add another thing that hasn't been underlined enough during this debate, is that it's, of course, this package deal negotiated on July 21st is a big success for the EU. It is, of course, it has been supported, first of all, by the Franco-German tandem, but Chancellor Merkel's role was actually fundamental in this whole agreement, because Germany in the previous crisis was very attached to austerity, to fiscal discipline, and now it agreed to actually put solidarity in the middle of its presidency and the recovery plan. So I would underline this aspect. And there was a tweet that really seemed expressive for me. It was Enrico Letta who said that while it took the EU 4 years to respond to the financial crisis, to the Eurozone crisis, it took the EU only 4 months to respond to the COVID crisis. So I would see it as a message of hope for the future of the EU, and I hope we will be growingly reactive to future crises. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Maria. As there are questions coming in from the audience, I think we will get back to your point on Franco-German relations later. But there is one question asked by a member of the audience for Balázs regarding how is it to be active in the current political climate in Hungary. Could you tell us a bit more about your work there?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question. Well, it's really interesting. So there's this thing going on with the main opposition media portal called Index. So the editor-in-chief of Index was fired after something like a political decision, which really fostered some public anger. And now there's been protests against it. Obviously, protests for freedom of the press in Hungary, and people are just people are really divided between two parties, between the opposition and the ruling party. And it's the sort of thing. So right now I'm not in the capital. I'm from the capital, but right now I'm on the countryside, and the countryside is known for more being aligned with the governing party. And now people around here obviously should getting all this money that the cohesion fund and the regional development fund should go to them. But what we are seeing here is literally just there's this great amount written up in advertisement boards, but that is not really the money that they're receiving. That's why I've said that we should really closely monitor how they are spending the money, not just how they are allocated. So we must accommodate the political environment in Hungary to, you know, those countries that have rule of law procedures going on against. These money should be closer monitored how they are spent. But otherwise, I think everyone is really excited for the next general elections, which will happen in 2022. Right now, the capital, Budapest, has an opposition leadership, like the municipality is now led by an opposition politician, and we can see great things happening. So that might initiate new and further changes. And I don't know, we're just really excited to see. And thank you for the question.
Thank you. That was that's really interesting to hear. We have one more, as I said before, for Théo, regarding the point Maria brought up concerning Franco-German relations. The Green Deal too was backed by both Macron and Merkel. Now we've had them agreeing on the recovery fund. What does that say about the current stance? How's the German-French friendship doing after all?
Well, it's actually a very complicated question, because during the last few months, there have been a lot of articles written about how bad the relationship between France and Germany was actually, because Macron was seen and is still seen as someone who wants to go very fast, who wants to reform a lot, even though he has many difficulties in his own country. So he wants to be the savior of the European integration, and he wants simply to go too fast for some of his partners, and especially Germany. So during the last months, it was a bit complicated, but it's very interesting how fast it evolved actually, because on the 18th of May 2020, the Franco-German tandem proposed a common initiative which suggested actually debt mutualization and transfer unions. So it's astonishingly fast how it evolves. And now, during the European Council, we've seen that Macron and Merkel were always together negotiating, even during the bilateral talks. So they were very they decided to follow a common strategy during the European Council, and it partially works, because once again in the end, and as Maria emphasized, we have a good deal for Europe. We have a good deal for the European Union. So it's very important to repeat that, because even though the figures are not that ambitious as we wanted them to be, it's a good deal. And once again, some media praised the Franco-German tandem as being the motor of the European integration. It's true. It's not that true, because we have 25 other member states beside. So it's a question of respect to include them in the final deal. But I've read an article by an Austrian newspaper a few days ago. It's I think it's the Kleine Zeitung in Austria, who said that the Frugal Five or the Frugal Four, it depends, put a huge challenge to the Franco-German tandem, and it shows that the Franco-German tandem is not an hegemony in Europe. So it shows how the dynamics are changing in Europe, and how the Franco-German tandem is not that almighty in Europe anymore. So once again, it's not easy to say to put a straightforward answer, and we have many factors, and we have many ways to analyze. But I think that even though the Franco-German tandem is still very important in Europe to clinch deals, we really have to discuss together, and to discuss in 27 members.
Thank you, Théo. We would have one last question from the audience. So this is also your last chance to raise your hand, post an emoji, write a question in the chat. Last question we had come in was for Juuso regarding the discussions in the European Council. And it was, why did Finland jump to the Frugal Four? And if you could also answer a second one asked by the same person, should one worry about the pro-European stance of usually liberal pro-European countries such as Finland, but also the Netherlands, Denmark?
So, yeah, Finland officially didn't want to be a part of the frugal countries, but it was very closely aligned with them during the summit. It was a little bit bizarre, actually, why Finland didn't want to officially align with these countries, but it might have been a question of reputation management. That's the only interpretation that I personally can come up with. When the Prime Minister came home from the summit, she was criticized for not being frugal enough. She was criticized for not asking for a rebate from the membership contributions, like what some of the other countries got. And yeah, there was the classic complaint like, well, Finland is paying more than it receives. But it was not a surprise that this was going to be Finland's position, that it was going to be very negative, lukewarm at best towards direct grants from the recovery fund, because some of you may remember from the Euro crisis, Finland was perhaps the toughest negotiator on the table. Finland was probably even tougher than Germany. They were asking for special guarantees from Greece that Finland's liabilities to Greece were not going to materialize. Finland was going to get its money back from Greece. So there is a history of this. The Finnish Eurosceptic party, the True Finns, came into prominence in 2011, mainly because of the Greek debt crisis. That brings me to the pro-European orientation of Finland and perhaps other countries. Finland has a very hard right party, as the True Finns. They took quite a far right turn a couple of years ago. They went from like this conservative Eurosceptic party into a party that I don't know. I would say they are kind of close to Donald Trump in certain ways. They used to be the largest party in Finland in polling before the Corona crisis. So the coronavirus brought the traditional moderate parties back into prominence again. The Social Democrats became the largest party again in polling after several months of being second or even third. So I don't think we should discount the risk of a Eurosceptic turn in countries like this. What protects, in a way, Finland and the Netherlands as well, which was mentioned, is the tradition of coalition governments. So I think it will be very hard to build a hard Eurosceptic coalition in either the Finnish or the Dutch parliaments, even if the Nationalist Party came first in an election. So in that way, there is some kind of a protection there. But I think yeah, you can't ignore the possibility of some of these parties becoming a part of the government. In Finland, the True Finns were a part of the government in 2015-19, and it did influence Finnish EU policy. For example, on the question of the migration crisis, Finland did change its policy slightly because the True Finns were a junior coalition partner. They abstained in one key vote instead of voting in favor. So I think that's my thoughts on this.
Thanks, Juuso. So seeing that there are no more questions, and we are near the end of our little exchange, knowing that we could go on for ages, actually, as there are so much more topics to discuss than just the three we choose. It's really hard to do a wrap up. I think a wrap up would also not be up to all your great comments and thoughts. I mean, definitely the discussion shows we need the European public sphere to have this exchange of the perspectives more often, more regular, and in a more neutral way. I'm so happy that we have the multilingual WebZine, the new Federalist network. Equally happy to see that JEF is active in so many countries, specifically countries where JEF hasn't been that active years ago. So really thumbs up for that. That was also mentioned in the chat. I saw some cheering to you guys. So maybe we just close with one last question to you, and maybe we can agree to stick to 1 or 2 sentences. Although I know it's hard to do that. Also hearing the question, where do you see, actually, where do you see Europe in a year? Do you think the European Union will have come out stronger of the Corona crisis? Like the good old narrative says, that the European Union sometimes needs a crisis to be stronger. What's your overall stance? And I suggest we start with Anna and go on with Maria afterwards.
In my opinion, we will definitely come back out of this stronger. And I think the financial solidarity today means the stability of Europe tomorrow. So that's it for me. Thank you.
I totally agree with Anna. It is a very good conclusion. Instead of saying how I see Europe in the future, I would formulate another expectation, namely more investment in the youth, because many of my Polish friends have discovered Europe through their Erasmus program. So I think it is a pity to cut just the funding for Erasmus Plus programs. So I really hope Germany is going to be a mediator in saving this funding.
Thanks for outlining that. I never saw so many strong nods on that with the speakers, and also maybe a good thing to make a short reference to the statements that were published by so many JEF sections and JEF Europe also in English, calling for more investment and involvement for youth. How about if we go on, Théo, João, and Balázs, and last but not least, Juuso.
So in 1 year, we will have a multi-annual financial framework. It's obvious, I think. Even though the European Parliament is a bit reluctant about some stuff in the final conclusion, it doesn't have the political capacity to hinder the deal. But I think that next year we will have a big debate about the calendar to find own resources to reimburse all the money that we have to borrow. So we will come out even stronger if we have own resources for the European Union.
Yeah, I completely agree. Actually, when I start seeing the coronavirus, I feared for the worst. Okay, I have the mic on. I feared for the worst, but then I think the stability in the union of everyone inside the European Union show that we can really thrive and really came out really stronger with these situations. So I think that that the word here is union, and that JEF is one of the things that I find beautiful in Europe, that we come all together and discuss these topics and bring everyone closer. So I think that we'll be thriving, and we will be stronger afterwards. Absolutely.
Well, obviously everything can be undermined by a second wave of the virus, but I think if we start a green recovery, and if we put in motion the Conference on the Future of Europe and make sure that interinstitutional cooperation is being done, I think we will, and the European Union will definitely come out stronger after the crisis.
I'm the last speaker. I wanted to say something negative, but I'll try to say something negative and then something positive. Yeah, it looks like a second wave of the virus is coming, and that is going to be really bad for the economy. I think the economic crisis is the worst is still yet to come. I think it will deepen, and I think it may have some real effects on the social fabric, just like the previous Euro crisis did. So we shall see if the economic instruments that the EU has come up with will be enough, or whether there will be calls for even more budgetary solidarity. Whether that is going to be possible in that climate anymore. But the positive part is that this is one of the greatest peacetime crises that Europe could possibly experience. So if Europe does overcome this, it will have a moment of reflection. This is the kind of a post-crisis environment where major changes could potentially be envisaged and agreed on. So if we want major change in Europe, perhaps this is the moment to call for that.
I think that was the strongest last word statement that we could have asked for. Many thanks to all of you for being here. People are writing in the chat right now. Thank you all for the insights too. Thank you to everyone as well for being here, and for my part a special thank you to Laura, who is in here too, and to Florian, who cannot be here tonight, because they played a huge role in organizing this and setting everything up and making sure that technical stuff would go all right tonight. Huge thank you for that. And Malte, do you have some last words for us?
Some last words, no. Also from my side, a huge thanks to the speakers, to everybody who listened, but then again, especially to the team in the background, Laura and Florian, who actually did all the work before, and that is the important work, as most of you know probably. We would be happy if you join the social media discussion. Also, we warmly invite you to watch out for the video we will publish afterwards. Add in here the presentation where you can see the hashtags. Again, for those of you who might not be active with JEF yet, or with the New Federalist Network, it exists in so many countries, 30 or around 30 if I'm not mistaken, and so many versions, language versions of the truly European webzine of the New Federalist Network. So we invite you to join us there if you were inspired, or to stay with us, keep fighting for our ideas, for the federal Europe, for the European idea, and for all that was mentioned so nicely by our wonderful guests. So thank you very much. Enjoy the evening, the summer as well. Keep your head up in these difficult times, and yeah, I hope to see you again in some way or another. Goodbye.